And the whole time when I was wrestling, I always had in the back of my head, I wasn't wrestling to wrestle, I was wrestling to pursue an MMA career. That is kind of my style. I like to be on top. I like to try to crush people. I think that's probably the most important thing, is just building the skill levels. Making sure you belong.
Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rapaport. Today, I am joined by Sean, the Winter Soldier Magnus Babbitt. He's an amateur MMA athlete from Soldotna, Alaska, now based in Austin, Texas. He holds an amateur 5-0 record, recently won at the Fury Fighting Championship Amateur Series 56 at welterweight, defeating his opponent by arm triangle in the first round pretty quickly just a couple weeks ago. But before transitioning to MMA, Sean earned a gold medal at the 2019 IBJJF World Jiu-Jitsu Championship. I'm excited to have him on today. Thanks for joining me today, Sean. How are you and where are you joining from?
Thanks, Ryan. Doing good, well. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. So,
yeah, man, talk to me a little about that. I actually looked up Soldotna, had no idea where it was. I wasn't familiar with it whatsoever, but talk to me a little bit about what motivated your move from Alaska to Texas and how's that relocation kind of impacted your combat sports career here?
So I grew up in a place called Kisilov, right next to Soldotna. And I grew up training martial arts and wrestling in Soldotna. As I finished up my wrestling career, so high school, my coaches wanted me to go to college and wrestle. But my MMA coaches wanted me to go fight. And there's a guy named Curtis Hembroff. Curtis owns 10th Planet Austin. Curtis is also a native Alaskan. He's Kanaitse native. But I kind of grew up with Curtis. So Curtis basically recruited me to move to Texas and work and train and fight for him. And I'm very happy with the choice.
Yeah, I think people are surprised to realize that there is actually a super solid MMA scene in Alaska. I don't think a lot of people know that. I've actually interviewed a few people from there before on the amateur scene, so I've been able to get a look into that. But I know now you're wearing the shirt there. That your 10th Planet, you were able to start getting a job working at Joe Rogan's comedy club Mothership, or the comedy Mothership.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Mothership, right? Yeah, the Mothership.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just curious because, I mean, obviously Joe's impact on the world of combat sports is pretty cool. Can you share some of your experiences there and how this is maybe even complementing your journey into being a professional fighter?
It's one of my favorite jobs I've ever had. It's pretty amazing. The best part about that job is just from the top to the bottom, everyone's awesome. Like the managers, the upper management, Joe, everyone's cool, everyone's great to work for. That's my favorite part. So I've worked a lot of good jobs where I've had a lot of shitty bosses. So this one's pretty amazing. It's unique in that. It came about so when they first opened up, Joe hit up his lead security guy and was like, hey, open this club, who should I hire? Who should I have run the security? And he said, I would probably go hit up the local MMA gyms and then see if they have some guys. And so because of Joe's affiliation with 10th Planet, they kind of reached out to 10th Planet and they ended up having some guys that came over. And then I actually got hired on pretty early. Actually, before I was 21, I got hired on. And then when they realized I was under 21, they had to put me on hold for about 4 months. So for about 4 months, I was kind of just an employee. I just wasn't allowed to go to work. And then after I turned 21, I was hired on. And then me and a guy named Zach Moore, so we were both hired on. Zach's a 10th Planet brown belt. Eventually, we became what we call leads, so we kind of helped manage on the floor level. But we also kind of helped pick through the original people hired on that weren't
Right.
combat athletes, and we've just slowly transitioned to almost completely 10th Planet MMA fighters and a couple guys from B team. Well, one guy from B team. So now it's entirely made up of just either high level jiu-jitsu guys or MMA fighters.
Man, I love that. Just you're gonna be the more cooler, calmer, level-headed security. I'm sure Joe appreciates that. And I actually met Joe at the Comedy Store. Man, that was like 2020, 2019, 2020, right before the pandemic. And so I've heard great things. Haven't been to the Mothership yet, but I've heard like really amazing things about the atmosphere there. But I'm a big believer in bringing martial artists into the security situations. I have a few friends who work personal security and crowd security. But as this amazing wrestling background you have as state champ, the fact that you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and just being a part of the background noise there. Being a strong competitor, how do you balance and integrate those two disciplines and like getting ready to train for these fights? Obviously, not a striker background, but the way I've seen you integrate that in your fights has been pretty impressive here.
So when I first moved to Austin, I had just finished up a lot of wrestling. So I started jiu-jitsu when I was young. I was about 11 years old. I did my first 4 or 5 years of jiu-jitsu before I ever wrestled at all. Then I went into high school and I wrestled a lot. I didn't really get a wrestle until about sophomore year. I broke my ankle the first year wrestling. And then sophomore, junior, especially senior year, I was wrestling basically year round. Almost the entire time I still trained jiu-jitsu, but my focus was really in wrestling. And the whole time when I was wrestling, I always had in the back of my head that I wasn't wrestling to wrestle, I was wrestling to pursue an MMA career. So that kind of hindered me in the actual competition part, but I'm happy with how I trained it. So then once I finished and moved to Texas, I did start doing a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions. So when I first got here, I did a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions, and that was super fun. The past couple years, I've kind of slowed down on some jiu-jitsu competitions and just focused on MMA. And so right now, it's just been a lot of striking focus. I still train jiu-jitsu and I still wrestle, though obviously so important. So I'm training and doing wrestling probably 3 or 4 times a week. But right now, it's just a lot of boxing, kickboxing practices, a lot of working with the coaches. I have a lot of amazing coaches, and they give out free practice to a lot of the MMA fighters. So few times a week, I'm doing pads with a guy named Kyle Howard, Andrew Craig. It's just a lot of private work, a lot of sessions. I'm just trying to improve that overall skill level of striking.
Yeah, man, it's definitely a different world. But I mean, having 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu Austin behind you is amazing. He's talked to me a little bit about their unique approach and how that's worked within your performance and your execution there. Is obviously 10th Planet's known for having a pretty unique curriculum.
Yeah, it definitely is unique. They have a lot of amazing coaches here. So the owner and Curtis Hembra, he's one of my favorites. Older school. He's a more almost just I would say this classic jiu-jitsu style. Dominant on top, very mean style jiu-jitsu. That is kind of my style. I like to be on top. I like to try to crush people. But then they have the specialists there. They had Gabe Tuttle, head coach for forever. He's actually opening his new school, so he's about to move on to open a school right now. And they have Ben Eddy. He's the rubber guard phenom. So I get to see a lot of styles, a lot of different jiu-jitsu that I didn't grow up with, and it is definitely fun to see, fun to learn from those guys. Um, and then we also have a pretty heavy wrestling group in our school. Um, with some of the wrestlers we have there, we also tend to bring in wrestlers from outside areas. So we actually just had a Olympic bronze medalist hang out with us for a few weeks, wrestling with us. And he was joining the MMA team. I think his name was Milo. I forgot his full name right here, but it's a pretty unique gym that with the people we get swinging by. Then on our like weekend open mats, we get guys from B team and New Way jumping in. So I get to see a lot of variety, a lot of good athletes.
Oh, that's great. I mean, just hear the different mix you're getting down there. I mean, I've heard Austin is becoming obviously a hot scene there. Like, obviously Fury's based out of Houston, but B Team being there, knowing that you guys are intermingling is always good to hear. And you had a tough opponent, man. I didn't say it at the top. I know I said it privately, but congratulations again on the win on February 2nd, man. That was just like a dominant performance. Gates was no joke, and he was a big guy, and you made him. I mean, he's 6'4", right? 100, welterweight 6'4" dude. I mean, you don't see that very often. But talk to me. I know the weight cut didn't go the way you wanted it to. You didn't end up getting the title because of that, even despite the dominant performance. But would you be willing just to talk a little bit about that weight cut? What you think may have went wrong, and how you're going to improve on that strategy, or do you take any lessons from that?
Yeah. So I went into that weight cut feeling good about it. But right before the fight happened, I got a staph infection in my hamstring, and so about 12 days before, I did a 10-day cycle of antibiotics. So right before I cut weight, I just got off my antibiotic cycle, and I think that was a part of it, because I did have 4 other fights. I did the exact same cut 4 other times. It's always been fun. It's always sucked, but it's always been fun. And I would cut wrestling too, or cut for big tournaments, and I've never missed weight before. This time going in, we did the same thing. So water loading program, dropped our sodium 2 weeks out. Felt good going in, but I just wasn't coming off. So the last few nights, so what we usually do is we get an Airbnb in the location we're fighting at. So this was Houston, so I was spending a couple days in Houston before the fight, and we cut a lot. We were up all night the night before cutting, and it just wasn't coming off. And I hadn't really seen that before, so I think part of it was just my body was just trying to hold on some of that from the antibiotics. Um, but for the next one coming up, I'm gonna be jumping on to Leon Edwards has a nutritionist that has a full weight cut package I'm gonna be using for the next one. So I'm excited. Some of my teammates use that same package, so I'll be using that going forward.
Yeah, man, that's one of those things, right? The antibiotics. I mean, I even think about that with like Sean Strickland and his recent loss and all the crap people were giving him. And it's like, I mean, the guy is you're recovering from staph. I mean, that's a serious thing, especially a couple weeks out. So, Graham, I'm glad you were able to go through that and take care of it at the same time. I'm sure that must have been frustrating, but obviously that's not an excuse, right? Like, you went out there and you still performed. Tough way that happens, but that's just how the game is sometimes. I know we had talked a little bit about this because your reps growing, right? You're undefeated as an amateur. You've gone out and won big against some really good competition. We had talked a little bit about this offline, but how are you approaching like the sponsorships and partnership sides to your fight camps and kind of this career progression that you're having here?
So that's something I am still pretty new to, and I'm still trying to gain some knowledge on. At the moment, the main focus for me has just been in networking. So I haven't done a whole lot and actually reaching out and asking for anything or trying to make any progress yet, but I have gotten a lot of connections, a lot of phone numbers. I meet a lot of people. I gotta get a one up on that because of my job, because that's who I get to meet. So I do get to meet and talk to a lot of cool people, and a lot of times they're interested in networking a little bit, exchanging some phone numbers, talking a little. So I just have to follow up with those guys, and so far I haven't really reached out talking too much about sponsorship stuff, but that is something I'll probably be using in the future when I gain a little bit more experience in that and just kind of understand it some more. But at the moment, not a lot yet.
No, man, you're taking the right steps, right? Building that social presence, meeting people, engaging with them, staying in touch. That's the most important thing, particularly from a brand perspective and some of the people you'll be seeing coming through the club, man. That's super important, and leverage that platform, right? Obviously, you have a professional job to do and to deliver on, but that's the beautiful part about professional jobs is they open up new inroads for you as well. Talk to me, do you get a lot of like a social media outreach? Are you finding a lot of fans finding you through the work that you're doing out there in the combat sports world? Or are you able to like engage with the fans and attract maybe potential new people behind the scenes as well?
Um, it's slowly growing. Um, I need to keep working on it. It's something I definitely have a lot of work to do. Um, I got a few fights back. Mothership did a little quick post on me, and that helped a lot. But I think what's happens is so I get my posts from Fury, my posts from 10th Planet, and some posts from Mothership, and I've kind of capped on those audiences a little bit. So I just need to keep fighting, keep putting stuff out there, and then just working on those networks to get some new audiences. Um, it's definitely growing, but it's just a slow process. Something I need to learn some more about also.
Yeah, like you said, man, though, it is a process, right? It's one of those things you're picking it up, you're meeting the right people, and I think you'll start getting cued into what works for you as well. And most important, it's being authentic, and you strike me as the type of person that's doing that. You're undefeated now in your amateur career. What advice would you give to other emerging athletes out there about navigating that entry level aspect of an amateur and building yourself up towards your professional MMA career, at least from your short experience here?
Um, I think just the most important thing is focusing on just kind of that overall goal. So just the skill progression. So like obviously when you have a fight coming up, you're focusing on the fight. You have your opponent, you're looking at your opponent, and you're kind of building out your camp for that. But I think people will have a fight, they get so focused in on that, and then they fight, and then they kind of just hang out for a while. They're not really doing a whole lot. They're not really progressing themselves in that in between time. I think that's the biggest time you're actually leveling up is those in betweens when you're building your skills. I think people get kind of lax sometimes and don't focus on getting better. They really focus on getting somewhere, but a lot of times they'll get there without the skills to do it. So that's something I've trying to be really careful on is not going too fast into organizations or trying to go anywhere until I'm actually at the level to be there. I think that's probably the most important thing is just building the skill levels, making sure you belong.
Well, that's a lot of wisdom there, man. Yeah, and speaking to that, you're 5-0 as an amateur now. Do you have what that career progression is going to look like for yourself moving forward? Obviously, dominant win pretty quick here. Where do you kind of see yourself going over the next few months? And do you even know what that next step's going to be? Because I know it's hard for you to get fights, man. With not many people are looking to be out there with you and get that blemish on their amateur career. So what do you think's next?
So I think with me, my coaches have planned is I'm going to try to take this full next year and do as many AMI fights as I can. I'm actually looking a little bit at middleweight also for not for pro but for AMI, just to get more experience. So I want to take this next year, just get as much skill built as I can, much experience fighting these AMI fights as I can. So whoever I can fight for as AMI, I'll probably end up taking it. And then after this year, we'll start talking about looking at potentially going pro. But right now, I just really want to build the skill and build some experience. If I can keep getting some fights, I would like to take both Fury belts for welterweight and middleweight. It'd be nice to have as AMI before I move up. I just have to see if I can get some more fights with them. But that's the plan right now.
That's a smart move, man. And I think it's going to pay dividends for you. Well, hey, Sean, really love getting this and really happy to kind of broadcast and get some more people tuned into the train of the Winter Soldier here because I know you got some big things ahead of you. Appreciate you taking the time today, man, and looking forward to seeing what's next.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.